All of the pressure at Jackson State falls squarely on TC Taylor. Oh yeah, it's Locked on HBCU. Play my music.
You are Locked on HBCU, your daily podcast covering HBCU sports. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked on HBCU podcast, your number one daily one-stop shop for everything HBCU athletics, Monday through Friday, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I, of course, am Darian Gray, aka the Mouth of the South, Texas Southern alum and former TSU Herald Sports editor. Thank you for going on this journey with me, making Locked on HBCU your first listen of the day every day. And remember, just because the mic cuts off does not mean that the journey is over. Just means it's time to follow me on Twitter at South Exclusives. Wow, I haven't missed that way in a while. I have a terrible chair right now, so please excuse me if I just continuously get up and adjust myself, but this chair continues to go down. I need a new one, but look how much taller I am now, right? Anywho, I appreciate you for making us your first listen of the day every day. And we're going to end the show talking about my alma mater and how they need to find a defensive identity as they go through spring practice. But we're going to start off talking about some other Tigers within the SWAC. We're talking about Jackson State, one of the most anticipated spring games, in my opinion, that's going to go on this year. And I think there's an immense amount of pressure on head coach TC Taylor. Now, I'll be honest with you. Most times when people talk about pressure, we're talking about hot seats. We are not talking about hot seats. This is year one of the TC Taylor era. There is no reason for his seat to be even slightly heated, okay? We are simply talking about the pressure that falls on Jackson State. It also and mainly falls on TC Taylor. I'm going to say something that I don't know if everybody will agree with, and quite frankly, I kind of hope that everybody doesn't. But let's see. To me, there is more pressure on TC Taylor this year than there has ever been on Deion Sanders. If it's not more, it's comparable. It's even. This is peak pressure. For me, the highest level of pressure that Deion Sanders was ever under at Jackson State was his last game, after he announced that he was going to be leaving, after it was clear that he needed to win an HBCU championship. See, there goes the seat again. But after it was clear that he was going to be leaving, if he didn't win an HBCU championship, if he didn't win a Celebration Bowl this game, he wasn't going to win one at all. And his 2 years as just fanfare that came with it, as fantastic as it was during the regular season, there wouldn't be an HBCU championship you could attach to it. There was so much pressure on him to get that done. It's that type of pressure for me, extended over a continual 12 to 13 weeks, depending on how far that they go. That's the pressure that TC Taylor is under to me, because he is under the pressure to not skip a beat. You can't stop. You can't be like, oh, well, we're going to have a down year. If you have a down year, you have to understand this is the moment that everybody has been waiting for 2 seasons. Do you understand the amount of enemies that Jackson State fans, and just naturally Jackson State, the school, have made over the last couple of years? And I'm not even talking about the he ain't SWAC comments. I'm not talking about any of that. I'm simply talking about the fact that when you're winning, you're talking. I don't know a fan base that doesn't talk when they win. When you start succeeding, you are going to talk trash on social media. And when you're succeeding, people are going to talk trash to you. Do you know what the go-to line to nearly every single Jackson State fan was? Wait until Deion leaves. Wait until this little period of time is over. The time has come. Deion is gone. Deion's in Colorado. We don't even talk about him on a show like that anymore. He's gone. It's on TC Taylor to weather the storm, because you have to fight through those people who are going against Jackson State because Deion Sanders was there for 2 years and it was like, we ready to whoop y'all now. You have to fight through the people who, when Deion Sanders was there, says y'all only are this because of Deion Sanders. Now it's the same sentence, same sentiment. No, excuse me. It's the same sentence, different sentiment. right? It's the same sentence that y'all just this because Deion Sanders. But when it comes from a Grambling fan, when it comes from a Delaware State fan, when it comes from a FAMU fan, it's a little bit different than when it comes from somebody from Kansas. We know what the person from Kansas is saying. My chair has never been this bad. I genuinely apologize for all of my YouTube viewers. I genuinely do. Because I recognize it after you. You just see me going, and then I just have to rise on up. But anywho, let's continue with this, right? There is so much pressure on Jackson State to be top notch. And honestly, I don't even know if it's fair. We don't know who the quarterback's going to be. All the receivers from last year, gone. Aubrey Miller going to be a high-level draft pick, or a mid-round draft pick, I should say. There's so much uncertainty, yet and still there's so much pressure for him to live up to what these last 2 seasons have been. Now, realistically, I don't think people are expecting them to be an undefeated SWAC team. And if they are not, there's going to be a small margin of people who do talk about them. However, the majority of people aren't going to say anything unless they lose 3-4 games. You have an 8-4 record. You have an 8-4 record in the SWAC. Oh, you're going to hear it. Now, once again, this has nothing to do with his actual job security. He's in year 1. He's in year 1. But when you look at the fact that everybody has been waiting for Jackson State to fail, and the day they said they would fail is when Deion Sanders left, it is on you, TC Taylor, because who's the face of Jackson State right now? It ain't Deion Sanders. It's not Shedeur Sanders. You don't know who your quarterback's going to be, so it's not them right now. I know that Isaiah Guthrie was a high-level transfer. We don't even know if Sevion Wilkerson is going to be on the team anymore. Who is it? Is Niles Gaddy? No. I'm sorry, as a defensive lineman, he doesn't hold that cachet to be the face of Jackson State. So if Jackson State struggles, the face of their struggles will be their head coach. You don't have a personality big enough to be the face of this program right now. It's not Shedeur, the guy who people wanted to say should be a Heisman candidate. It's not Deion. Well, it would have been Deion Sanders, the head coach. Now that role is filled by TC Taylor. So the pressure that is on Jackson State to still be a successful team, the pressure that is on Jackson State to not skip a beat, to still live up to the standard of the last 2 seasons, it's not only on Jackson State, the football team. It's not only on Jackson State, the fans, because you are going to feel it. If your team does not perform, it's not just on them. Matter of fact, I wouldn't even say it's majorly on them. The people who need to be concerned are the AD, the higher up, right? But then mostly TC Taylor, the head coach. Because whether you pass or you fail, whether you excel or you plummet, TC Taylor should be the face of Jackson State for at least this year until we see some player who can take that spot. And being the face of the program, being the face of the team comes with certain pressures. Please excuse the obvious jump cut if you're on the video side of things, because I could not withstand my seat continuously going down and going down, me trying to get it back up, and it's going down and going down. Hopefully, if you're a Jackson State fan, TC Taylor is nothing like this seat that I have in my room. Hopefully, when the pressure is on him, he does not go down and go down and go down. Hopefully, he stays exactly where he is, because some people have the whole wide world in their hands. Other people like TC Taylor have the pressure of the whole world resting on their shoulders. How is he going to respond? Only time will tell. But I'll tell you one thing that's going to be key in their success is their new offensive scheme, where the tight end is actually an extreme focal point. Let's dive into this switch as we continue with Locked on HBCU. Before we get into that, today's episode is brought to you by Built Bar. Built Bar is the #1 protein bar on the market, bar none. Listen, most protein bars are not tasty. They're very useful. You need to go work out, get you a protein bar. You need to just go do some exercise, whether you're going for a run, lifting, doesn't matter. Get you a protein bar. They're good for that. Many candy bars are not good for you, but they're absolutely delicious. And Built Bar is like a fusion of both. They're extremely good for you and they're extremely delicious. So if you're looking at the flavors like cookies and cream, churro, chocolate chip chunk, if you're looking at all of those things, you're like, man, this thing is probably gonna be fat. But then you realize it is a protein bar. And as a protein bar, it's good for you. You're gonna be high in protein, low in fat, low in sugar, but you're covered in 100% dark chocolate. You even have the Built Puff that's dark chocolate on top of marshmallow. It doesn't make any sense to me, but I don't create foods. I just talk about them, and I could talk about Built Bar all day long. But instead of continuing to go on and on and on, I'll just tell you where you can find them. Go to Walmart, get you a 4-pack. Go to Sam's Club, get you a 13-pack. Or if you can take a little bit of patience, go through shipping, go to built.com and use the promo code LOCKED15 and you'll get 15% off your offer. As we continue rolling on today's episode of Locked on HBCU, things look a whole lot different, but I'm still thankful that you are making us your first listen of the day every day. I truly do appreciate that, and going through all the technical difficulties that we are clearly having at the moment. TC Taylor has the whole world on his shoulder. He has so much pressure, but what's going to be key in seeing that he succeeds is this new offensive scheme. See, he's a former quarterback, a former wide receiver. So, of course, I'm going to hammer in on the passing game. But it's not about the quarterbacks and the wide receivers. It's about the quarterbacks and the tight ends. Because when you look at this new offensive scheme that they have, the new offensive coordinator that they have, you're looking at the tight ends as a focal point. Let me read to you what offensive coordinator Harris said. I think that when we say the tight end is going to be a huge part of the offense, they, being the tight ends, really believe it now. They are going to be a huge part of what we do offensively. They give us a different dynamic. They see right now that they're going to be a vital part of what we do offensively. They've been buying into it. Now, I'm not just saying they're going to be a big part. They're vital. I'm not just repeating myself just because. This is an exact quote. And the reason that he says it 3 times, the reason that he says that 3 different times within his quote, not because he has a stuttering problem, not because he forgot he said it, because it's that important. You see, last year, of course, you had Shedeur Sanders, and that's going to take a lot of the headlines, but you had like 5 wide receivers. You had Dallas Daniels, you had Travis Hunter, you had Kevin Coleman, you had Hooks, you had Gaines. You had a lot of people out there who could catch passes, and that's not even including the tight ends. You're just talking about the wide receivers. You had a multitude of wide receivers, and this year there's 3 of them who they're saying look good in spring practice, but put them to the side for a moment because, according to Coach Harris, the tight ends will be a huge part of the offense. That's not changing. Of course, the wide receivers are still going to do what they do, and they'll likely be the leading receivers on the team, but we're talking about a coordinator who has a history working with tight ends and having them be extremely important. So when I look at DJ Stevens, when I look at Jency Riley, when I look at those guys and they tell me that they're buying in, now once you tell me that they're buying in, now I know that they believe it. Now I know that they're going to execute, or at least they're going to need to execute. Because I look at what Coach Harris was able to do with Evan Ingram at Ole Miss. Evan Ingram, in the only time that he was at Ole Miss, his tight ends coach was Coach Harris. Evan Ingram is the leader in Ole Miss history amongst tight ends in receptions, receiving yards, and touchdowns. He was the leading receiver on the team his senior year. He is the only player in Ole Miss history, the first player in Ole Miss history, and probably is still the only, but he definitely was the first player in Ole Miss history to be a 4-time All-SEC player. Evan Ingram is a stud. Evan Ingram developed under Coach Harris. So now you're looking at bringing that type of culture in. You have Dawson Knox, who also developed under Coach Harris. Now you're bringing that to Stevens and Riley. And I like it. I like it. It's going to be an emphasis. It's going to be different. When he says a different dynamic, it's going to be different from what Jackson State is used to. It's going to be different from what the SWAC is used to. There's not many teams whose focal point is going to be their tight end. Jackson State is going to be the case. And to be completely generic about it, if we're just going to be, let's get away from Coach Harris's scheme and let's just talk about what tight ends typically represent. Tight ends will typically represent a safety blanket for quarterbacks. And that's most useful when talking about a new quarterback. And what will Jackson State have? A new quarterback. So, Stevens, Riley, you are going to be a focal point of this offense, a big part of this offense because of who your coordinator is. But you're also going to be a big part of this offense because of who your quarterback is likely going to want to rely on. Stereotypically, that's what tight ends are good for. But let's talk about these guys. Because you're looking at the quarterback position, Coach Taylor, almost say Coach Harris again, but Coach Taylor said, we'll make a decision on who's going to get the first team reps. Now, of course you have to. Somebody has to take the snaps. But the reason it was important to say is because everybody knows who gets the first team snaps is typically viewed as the leader. It's typically viewed as whoever has a slight edge. It might not be much of an edge, but it's a slight edge. All of them are going to get first team reps. He said that. We're talking about Zy McDonald. We're talking about Jason Brown. We're talking about Phillip Short, all getting first team reps. And I thought I had a quote here, but I don't. It's a true close competition. I in no way believe that Jackson State will decide on a starting quarterback before probably 2 weeks before the season starts. If just a couple of days ago you're telling me everybody's going to get first team reps, I don't know who's going to get the first of the first team reps. This competition is close. It will not be solved in the next 3 days. That's unrealistic to believe that will happen. But somebody will be the quarterback. And whoever that quarterback will be will have a fun time throwing to Stevens, have a fun time throwing to Riley, because this will be a big part of the offense, and this pairing could be the thing that spurs Jackson State forward. Another thing I'll be watching is what's up with the running backs. It's all offensive, but what's going on with the running backs? Because I don't know if Sevion Wilkerson is coming back. And if he doesn't, you're going to need somebody to step up. It was a big job a big win retaining Wilkerson. But if now he's leaving, once you start saying you can only focus on the people who are here, I don't know. Once you start telling me that, I don't like how that sounds for a player. I can't remember the last time a coach said we're going to focus on the players who are here, and the player that he was avoiding talking about stayed with the team. I hope that Wilkerson stays because I like seeing him in the SWAC. Whew. But it's not looking good right now. Another thing that's not looking good is Texas Southern's defensive identity. And that's what they need to figure out during spring practice and figure out if they need to attack it through the transfer portal. I'm going to dive in why that's number one, numero uno priority for the Tigers right now as we continue with Locked On HBCU. As we're wrapping up today's episode of Locked On HBCU, thank you for making us your first listen of the day, every day, making it through so many of the just changes, going up, jacking up my seat, and then trying to stand up. I don't think I'm going to do this often. Honestly, I don't want to do this for 30 minutes. But I appreciate that, and making it all the way to segment 3. Thank you 5,000,005 times for that. I truly do appreciate it. Now, I want to talk about Texas Southern. I want to dive into Texas Southern and what their number one priority should be in spring practice. That's setting a defensive identity. Now, this was a hard one for me because I genuinely almost went with figuring out their passing offense. However, Andrew Body is there. You're hoping, like, you have so much faith in Andrew Body. In professional football, you have quarterbacks who get paid a good amount of money and you expect them to elevate. I think we're expecting Andrew Body to elevate right now. That doesn't mean just put him out there with nobodies and just tell him make something happen out of thin air. But it does mean that Andrew Body's existence alone is enough for me to say this is the number 2 priority. It is number 2. You got to figure out that passing game. It wasn't good enough last year. It wasn't. But the defensive identity, what was Texas Southern good at last year? They were opportunistic. That's what Texas Southern was really good at last year. They got a bunch of interceptions, had the most interceptions within the SWAC. But the reason that's not enough is because you probably wouldn't have been able to tell me. You know why? Because you're looking at the numbers. They're not good stopping the pass. They're not good stopping the run. That was apparent week 1. We saw that from the jump, and it never changed. They weren't a good defense last year. Simple and plain. They just were not. And if they were a good defense, they would be representing the SWAC West and the SWAC Championship last season. But they weren't. There's some other things that would have went into that, like Andrew Body not getting hurt at the end of the Alabama A&M game, that fumble not happening at the end. There's a lot of things that could have went into it. But in the grand scheme of things, I truly believe that they just had a better defense, they would have been in the SWAC Championship game last year. But that didn't happen. I'm not really here to focus on last season. We're talking about next year. When I'm looking at Texas Southern and what they can do next season, you have to decide if you're going to be opportunistic again. You need to replace Isaiah Hamilton because you're losing the leading player in interceptions from the SWAC, not just your team, but in the entire conference last year. He led the SWAC in interceptions. So you're already losing 5 right there, 5 of your 16. So you're losing your most pass deflections too. You're losing a very effective corner, a playmaker. He went across the street to University of Houston. So now you got to replace him. And they got a corner coming in who's a freshman. Maybe he can make some noise. We'll see. However, you got to replace him. But only building up that secondary is not enough. It's not enough. If you're going to put your pride, if you're going to put your faith, if you're going to say that this is the part of my team that stands above the rest when talking about the defense, you have to still build up your defensive line. That's not a question. See, I don't care how good your corners are. If you don't have a defensive line that can get some pressure, which Texas Southern could not last year, if you don't have a defensive line that can get some pressure, it's null and void. A good secondary with a poor defensive line is like hot links without bread. It'll get the job done sometimes. You know how many times I had a hot link without the bread? Yeah, it's still good. But you know that something's missing. You know that it's not quite at its peak. Something isn't there. And that is the pass rush. Because when I'm looking at the pass rush of any team and comparing it to the secondary, you can't cover for 7 seconds. If you never get to their quarterback, it's not going to matter. The same thing is flipped. Because if you have a really good pass rush, but you can't cover anybody for more than 2 seconds, you're not going to be a good defense. So if you're going to put your pride in being a pass-stopping defense, put your pride in being a pass-stopping defense and get some defensive linemen that can rush the passer. You've done a little bit of that during the signing day period. I'm not going to negate it, but I'm saying you have to evaluate that quickly. If you're going to be a run-stopping team, build the front seven. Either way, you got to build that defensive line. And I understand they tried to do it during signing day. And I'm not going to knock them and just assume it's going to fail. I'm too much of an alum for that. Too optimistic for that. But what I will tell you is that you need to evaluate it in the spring. And if it's not working at the place you wanted to, don't say, it'll get better during the... No. I don't want to hear it get better during the fall. The spring season, as far as the transfer portal, is going to open up April 30th, I believe. Whatever deficiency you feel like you have during the spring, you go attack with full force. Don't count on people to develop. Go get people you feel like can impact your team immediately. And that goes for everybody in the SWAC. I don't think there's a team in the SWAC that I just says, that's their conference. That is their conference. Nobody. Because Jackson State is not Jackson State of old. I know I'm talking about the pressure on TC Taylor. Even if they're good, even if they're a 9-3 team in the SWAC, 10-2 team in the SWAC, whatever, they might be in the SWAC. You need to make sure that you can compete because you should not feel like it's just theirs to lose. This is everybody's to win. It's a couple teams who don't have that. But for the most part, this is everybody's to win. And for Texas Southern, that means going to attack any deficiency, specifically on that defense, and set yourself an identity. You might not be a great run-stopping team. You might not be a great pass-stopping team. But you have to be at least above average to good at something. And if you don't feel like you are by the end of the spring, please, this is coming from an alum, please go attack that in the transfer portal because we need it. I don't say we unless I'm talking about you and I often. But right now, this we is not about you and I. It's about you. It's about me and my alma mater. We need it. Build that defensive identity. And I appreciate you for making us your first listen of the day every day. For your second listen, go ahead and check out Locked On Saints. Matter of fact, go check out Locked On Pelicans too because we just lost. That one hurt, man. That one hurt. I might pull out my Herb jersey next. Probably not. I might pull out my Herb jersey just to show that I'm dedicated. Who knows how I feel? I don't know. But either way, make them your second listen of the day every day. I'll go check them out shortly after I drop this episode. In the meantime, in between time, if you're looking for me, you can find me on Twitter at South Exclusives. Until the next time that we hear each other, family, take care. Stay blessed. Peace.